Asia is an amazing destination for travel, from Thailand to Vietnam to the Philippines, but this is one of the most underrated, spectacular, and affordable destinations in not only Asia but the world. I'm talking about Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka is one of the most beautiful countries, and it's one that's highly underrated. It's slowly becoming more and more popular as it's a small island but so diverse. I can't think of many other places where in a week-long holiday you could experience the hills, mountains, culture, safari, and beaches at the same time. I traveled to Sri Lanka earlier this year and it was a fantastic experience and one that I will never forget. Hence, I want to ensure that you have an equally good, if not better, experience when you go there, which I hope you do soon. Therefore, I've made this video which will guide you through how to plan a trip to Sri Lanka to have the best time possible. So it's been a while since I made a travel video. And by the way, if you haven't already, go check out my YouTube channel where I make videos about travel, lifestyle, and medical school. So if you're interested in joining me on my journey to becoming a doctor as well as trying to explore the world simultaneously, then smash that subscribe button down below and join me for more such videos. Anyway, let's get back to Sri Lanka. Oh, how I wish I was in Sri Lanka right now. Anyway, firstly, as I previously mentioned, I just want to establish that there are 3 to 4 main types of destinations that you're going to find in Sri Lanka. Ones that are oriented around culture, others around hills, mountains, hiking, another is around safari, and the final type of getaway you can find in Sri Lanka, one that's extremely popular, is beaches and obviously a coastal trip. And for each one there are multiple options on this relatively small island, and you can cover all of them in one trip with ease. So you'll most probably start your journey in the capital, Colombo, and ideally you'd want to take a loop around and come back to Colombo, which is where you'll be flying out of most probably. So I'll have 2 separate circuits that I'll be recommending throughout this video. One that goes slightly north of Colombo and the other one that goes slightly south of Colombo, and both of them have their particular differences and seasons, but they both pretty much cover all that Sri Lanka has to offer. Anyway, so now season. Season is one of the most important things to consider when traveling, and I've reiterated that in many of my previous travel videos. So season again matters in Sri Lanka as well. Sri Lanka can be traveled to pretty much any time of the year if you choose the right places to go to. But again, for a relatively small island, it has very variable weather patterns. So each place has kind of its own on and off season. If you're traveling to the southern coast, which is one of the most popular regions to travel to, you'd be looking at traveling between November and April. If you're traveling to the western coast, then you'd be looking at traveling between April to October. Basically, if you're traveling to the north of Colombo, April to October is better. If you're traveling to the south, then probably the conventional winter months are ideal in terms of weather conditions. But yeah, like I said, Sri Lanka has very variable weather patterns, so plan your trip and then investigate the weather forecast in each one of those places that you're going to separately to just ensure that you're not going to be met with any torrential storms or chilly weather on the beach or anything like that. But to be honest, we traveled to some parts of Sri Lanka in the off-season. That's not the typical on-season for those locations, and we were fine. There were some activities that we missed out on, but overall we still had a great experience. Now, moving on to duration. So, how long do you want to travel to Sri Lanka for? So, I'd say an ideal duration to travel to Sri Lanka is 7 to 8 days. Now, if you're short on time, you can even do a shorter trip. You can cram everything into 5 days. You'll still be able to do it all. It'll just be slightly more fast-paced. That's what we had to do on our trip to Sri Lanka. If you're looking for a super relaxed trip, just hanging out there, exploring day by day, then you could even stay for up to 2 weeks, if not longer. I'll delve into the breakdown of the durations more as I get into exploring the different locations in Sri Lanka. Now, let's say you landed in Colombo. What's your first stop? So, I'd say let's start out with experiencing some culture. So from Colombo, you'd want to travel to the city of Kandy, which is a cultural hotspot. It's located around a big water body. It's a lake, if I'm not wrong, and it's very scenic. and very rich in culture. One thing that you must visit there is the sacred temple of the tooth, which is a Buddhist temple, and it's one of the biggest, if not the biggest and most significant one in Sri Lanka. Kandy is definitely heritage and culture wise probably the top location to travel to in this country. Unfortunately, as our trip was short, we could only spend a couple of hours in Kandy, where we tried out some of the food and went and checked out the Kandy viewpoint and got this beautiful panoramic view of the city, but we didn't explore it much more. Moving on to the next stop. Now I'd say this one should be the hills or mountains. So firstly I'll go through Ella, because that's the place I actually visited. Ella is absolutely beautiful. It's a green, lush, hilly, mountainous town. It has some great hikes, including Little Adams Peak and Sigara Rock, and they're both quite doable, quite easy if you're a novice hiker or even if you've never hiked before. It has a vibrant city center with some great restaurants, great food, great shops, and then it has some beautiful waterfalls and tea plantation. One of the most significant places that you can travel to, not only in Ella, in all of Sri Lanka, is the Nine Arches Bridge, which is an absolute go-to destination for most people traveling to Sri Lanka. Sigara is another super popular destination. Now, Sigara is famous for Sigara Rock, which is a massive rock that has a fortress at the top of it. And you can hike up Sigara Rock to go to the top of that fortress, or you can go up again. Now, I'm gonna put the name up here, but I think it's, let me look it up. Pidurangala Rock? You get the gist. You can hike up this rock and you can get a view of Sigara Rock. So those two hikes are there, and I'm pretty sure they have some elephants and stuff around that region as well. So it's another great option to travel with. Ella would be part of the southern loop, and Sigara would be more if you're traveling towards the north. So for both of these locations, I'd recommend 2 days, 3 days if you have a bit more time. We did it in one. So you can do it in one, but it's nicer to have a more relaxed trip. So 2 days, I'd say, is ideal. Next stop, something that I love doing, which is safari. So Sri Lanka is one of the few places in the world that offers some great game drives and great safaris, and some great chances for seeing big game. Safaris in Sri Lanka are popular for a few different animals, but two main ones, and that's the Sri Lankan leopard and the Asian elephant. Those will probably be your top two targets on safari. Other than that, you can spot crocodiles, you can spot some deer, you can spot bears. And the top two locations for spotting wildlife and going on safari are Yala National Park and Wilpattu National Park. Yala is south, Wilpattu is north, and they're slightly different, although they're both good choices. Yala it's more popular, it's the most popular national park in Sri Lanka. It has probably the highest density of wildlife and the greatest density of leopards probably in the world. The disadvantage of Yala is it's very, very busy. You get a lot of tourists, so you can tell when you go on safari that the roads are absolutely crowded with jeeps and vehicles. So that's the only downside of Yala. Wilpattu will provide a slightly more isolated safari, like you're not going to be surrounded by other tourists and people as much as you will be in Yala. But again, the wildlife is not as dense, and in a short game drive you'll probably be able to see less. We managed to spot both a leopard and an elephant on our trip. Not an elephant, many elephants. The leopard, the sighting was from really far away. It was still great to see it, but ideally I would have liked to see it from closer by. For safari, you don't need more than 1 day, unless you're a wildlife enthusiast coming for some research or something. I love safari, and I don't think I could do that safari for more than 1 day, because the yield is relatively low compared to other safaris around the world. For example, if you go on safari in Africa or in India, but it's still a great experience, and I'd say it's a must-do for that 1 day, especially if you haven't been on many safaris before or you're a wildlife enthusiast. Now the last stop, and this is probably, I don't know, it might be the most popular thing in Sri Lanka, and that's beaches. So Sri Lanka's coast is world famous. People come from all around the world to surf at Mirisa Beach, or again, I don't know the pronunciation. or at Trincomalee or Arugam Bay. The southern coast is the most famous among surfers. The southern coast consists of Mirissa, Galle, can't really think of anything else, but those are two big places on the southern coast. On the western coast you have Trincomalee, northwestern, and southwestern you have Arugam Bay. So there are lots of great options for beaches in Sri Lanka, basically. I'd recommend a minimum of 2 days on the beach. That's non-negotiable. Even I, in my time-constrained trip, managed to spend 2 days on the beach. 4 is more probably ideal. Other than surfing, there are a couple of other mind-bogglingly amazing activities to do at Sri Lankan beaches. So I went to Mirissa Beach, and unfortunately it wasn't the season for either of these activities, but I would have loved to do them, and Mirissa is popular for both of these activities, and so is Trincomalee. But those activities are snorkeling with turtles, so you can actually just get a sort of set of diving glasses and get in the water and snorkel with sea turtles at what's known as Turtle Point. The other thing you can do is you can take a boat out into the ocean and you can go and spot blue whales. There are not many places in the world where you can see blue whales. Maybe California, Iceland, but this is one of the best places in the world to see blue whales. Again, during the right season, which is November to April, March time. I didn't travel during that time, so I unfortunately missed out on this experience, but it's a must-do if you ever go to Mirissa or Trincomalee during the right season. Now, those are the main destinations. You can compile them together however you want to. I think it would be pretty chaotic going from north to south to, different parts of Sri Lanka, so I definitely recommend the loop idea, where you go around and you come back to one particular destination. And on that note, let's discuss a few tips when traveling to Sri Lanka. So first of all, travel. How do you travel around the country? Clearly, it's a small island, you can do a lot, but it takes a few hours at least to get to each place by road. So if you're going in a group of more than 2 to 3 people, I definitely recommend hiring a car with a driver to take you around. It's not too expensive. It can be reasonable, and I'll link a few companies that you can do this with, and I'll definitely recommend the one I used, which was Drive Safe Sri Lanka, if I'm not wrong, that was the name. So yeah, hiring a car is a great option. The other good option, other than hiring a car, is probably taking public transport, and that means taking trains. Trains can be beautiful, especially if you're going over the Nine Arches Bridge. The train from Kandy to Ella is supposed to be beautiful, and you can take buses, you can take tuk-tuks around the city. So there are options for public transport. It will make for a slightly more rougher backpacking style trip, which Sri Lanka is great for. But if you're looking for something more comfortable, leisurely, you're in a big group and you can afford to split the costs, then I'd recommend taking a car and a driver who will also act as your guide. In terms of money and how you're going to spend in Sri Lanka, most big institutions or big sort of places accept card, like, restaurants, hotels, those kinds of things. But if you're going shopping in the markets and streets and stuff like that on the beach, then you'd be looking to keep some cash with you, and the local currency is Sri Lankan rupees. Again, slightly larger institutions, for example, car hire, sometimes may accept dollars or pounds, but for, again, most of these little places, you'd ideally want to be spending in Sri Lankan rupees, so definitely carry some cash with you. This is my rundown of how you travel the beautiful, beautiful country of Sri Lanka. I hope that was comprehensive enough. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them down in the comment section below. But if you enjoyed the video, you found it helpful, then definitely drop a like down below, smash that subscribe button, and let me know how your Sri Lanka trip goes or how the planning for it is going. With that, I will see you in the next one.